during this time. And Blake, you might need to take, oh, we're good, we're working it out, super. One of the first things that we know about grateful people, right, is that they're joyful people, and that all of us at this moment could use a little bit more joy, not simply because the holiday season is upon us, but because of what we've all been dealing with, managing, feeling overwhelmed by, and perhaps even in some moments appreciating some of the strange and paradoxical benefits that arose because we were stuck at home, right? I mean, yes, there's been the hardships, but also some of these are things that are happened that might have worked out for us as an opportunity. But we all know that when we're grateful from our own experience, we're going to talk about the science behind it. And there is actually quite a bit of neuro imaging and research around the science of giving thanks. But we know this from our own experience, right? When we wake up in the morning and we're thankful for our cozy bed or our cup of coffee, or we look out the window and the sun is shining brightly, or somebody in our home is, cracking a joke. And we have this recognition, right, that this is feeling good, that we feel grateful, we feel thankful. Do we often say it out loud? Some of us do, some not so much. But chances are, most of us, these feelings of gratitude are somewhat fleeting and for sure haphazard. So unless by chance we happen to remember to be grateful, or it's the time of year to be grateful, or something really big happens, right? You have a baby, or you get a new home, or your day, everything is going your way, it's going right. But aside from that, there's this sense that, it's an occasional visitor, not a regular guest. So how do we do that? And so for today, that is what we're going to live in the answer. How do we make gratitude and joy and connection a regular visitor and not an occasional guest? We're missing some slides here. Sorry about that, guys. There we go. So one of the things that we know as we look at our goals and objectives for today is that we humans don't have a tendency to be good at dwelling on good events as we are at what? Analyzing bad events. So, and that's just the case because of our ancestors, the ancestors who were basking in the sunshine on a big rock right before the ice age came, enjoying life, they're not here to talk about it. So in essence, the way in which we can plan, those who planned for disaster, those who were skilled at scanning for danger, they survived. So we need to work on this skill. In some ways, it's, swimming against the stream of the way the mind will tend to work without particular training. And of course, right now with all that's going on, and all you have to do is flick on the news or flick on, any sort of social media, and we have a deluge of information that makes us feel, let's say, a little bit disheartened at times, right? So there are these practices are grounded in careful science. What does that mean? Careful science means these are large representative studies with thousands of participants over a period of time. And at this point, since they started to begin this is kind of one of the sides of positive psychology, which is mostly hosted down at the University of Pennsylvania, although the studies are all around the world, has been going on since the early 2000s. So we have a couple of decades now of information to gather that what are these practices that help us. And so after a time, it becomes a habit. It becomes our automatic primary response. Instead of, this at the beginning when we're learning a new habit, that little bit of awkwardness around it. And one other thing I just want to mention on this slide is this notion of the holidays. I want to acknowledge for those of you in the room today who might be alone on Thanksgiving, or that for some of you, Thanksgiving is going to look a heck of a lot different, even if you're not alone. And if we, each of us, give thanks and cultivate thanks each day, then each day becomes a celebration. And that's what Thanksgiving is. It's a day. We load it with memories, we load it with nostalgia, we load it with a lot of other things, and some of which are true and some of which are good. But they're not all true and they're not all good. And so, and I know too that some of you, you mentioned giving back, and some spend days going to soup kitchens. And I'm going to send Jess, after our time together, I have compiled with it, because I've been teaching this for a while now, a list of virtual volunteer opportunities that you can get involved in. So that might be really helpful for you. So let's, still struggling a little bit here. I'm gonna have you take over the slides. They're not moving for me. So if you could, terrific. Thanks so much. So as I mentioned, they've done hundreds and hundreds of studies. What are some of the benefits? We know. And we're going to talk a little bit about mental health interventions a little bit later in the hour, but it reduces anxiety, it reduces depression. In the face of what we've been dealing with, it allows us to increase our ability to be more resilient and to foster relationships, and not just the relationships that are already going well, but the ones that aren't going so well. And it's also a time where we might be reaching out to family and friends that we haven't been in contact with a while because of, the beauty of Zoom, if you will. So I mentioned the fact that, it doesn't come naturally, but we often think, I'll be happy when, or we have our own personal prescription, right, for happiness. And if it doesn't look like what shows up, then I'm not happy. And isn't it true too, that when we allow things to be as they are and allow ourselves to be a little bit more curious, a little bit more receptive, and not so I'll be happy when, that opportunities arise that we couldn't have planned them better. Haven't we all had that experience a time or two? So moving on to the next slide. One of the very first staples in the positive psychology program is this what went well exercise, or they also call it the 3 good things practice. This you can start doing today. And I have had the great fortune of doing this over a number of years and seeing how incredibly powerful participants months later have told me this simple practice works. So grab a journal. It can, or go to CVS and get a pad of paper. It can be anything you'd like. But every evening for the next 3 weeks, for 5 or 10 minutes, write down 3 things that went well. Now, it sometimes is a stretch. If you've had a tough day, you might have to dig a little deep. Other days, it's going to feel really, really simple. And maybe it's going to be easy to fill up the page even, right? What we want to do is write it down. There's something about the way in which we anchor things, and we know this from a brain science perspective, that changes. It's different when we just say, oh, I'm thankful before I fall asleep. When we write it down, it also is not only cataloging for ourselves the things that went right in the past meaning that day, but when we do that as a habit, what ends up happening too is then, out of just kind of a natural progression, if you will, we start to notice the good things that are happening while they're happening, which is really what we want to have happen. It's wonderful to be able to look back and feel grateful, but it's, even more helpful if we can do it. Excuse me, I've got something in my face here. While we're in the midst of it. So let's move on to the next slide, because this is, I think, really profound. After doing this, say for 3 weeks, and then you may continue it on as a habit, which these folks did. Now, in the placebo group, there were no interventions. However, the placebo group had reported high levels of happiness and well-being, and that's why they were recruited in the placebo group. The others were the people that were writing down the 3 good things, or the 3 things that went well. And also, if you wanted to color it in, by the way, you could write why you think those things went well. Because sometimes you had something to do with it, or the other person did. So maybe something went well, and it makes you start to feel more grateful for the abilities that you have, that, you went out there and you were brave. Maybe you said something that was brave, or you start noticing this person that you work with, a colleague who, you know they've been doing a great job, but they really pull in for you. And to remember, of course, at all times, to the best you can and whenever you can, to actually verbalize that. So anyway, when we started off, when they were in the pretrial, of course, you see the placebo was much higher in their reported levels of happiness. And we know that to a great degree, this is subjective. But over time, we can gather this data, if you will, and it becomes more objective because we have enough people doing it for a long enough time. But if you can see the slide, it continues to go up and up and up. And over the course of years, because we've been able to see this, that continues to be the case for those that are practicing. And as I mentioned, having taught this in different iterations, people will say, I went from 3 to 5, but now every night my page is completely full of things that went well. Are we seeing the screen, everybody? Okay, I'm not seeing the screen any longer. So I'll just move along on the slide because I can't see it, but that's okay.
Gratitude letter, Catherine.
Hmm?
It says the gratitude letter right now.
Oh, it says the gratitude letter. Okay, terrific. Great. I just have it. All I have right now is a Zoom page, a home page of Zoom, but that's okay. I just wanted to we'll go back to the gratitude letter in just one second. That chart was a study done by Martin Seligman, who is one of the co-founders of the positive psychology movement. And he said this is one of the primary ways for us to overcome that negativity bias, the one I mentioned earlier in the slides, that our brain tends to get sticky around things that upset us or make us angry or upset, whereas it's like Teflon for the things that are a little easier. So moving along, because this is the second kind of strategy, if you will, amongst a host of strategies, is the gratitude letter or the gratitude visit. This is such a profound exercise. And this is a way to increase not only your own feelings of gratitude, but letting someone else in your life feel appreciated and valued. And while it's like the thank you notes and the gratitude notes we're talking about earlier, it actually has another layer to it. Because what it is it can be one of two things. Someone who maybe was a mentor to you for years and years, and you never were able to tell them, or maybe you had a falling out with someone, but while you look back on this arc of your relationship, there was so much good there. And so this can be a difficult thing. You could write a gratitude letter to someone who's no longer with us, but you never got to say thank you. Now, the thing about this letter is it deepens your relationship with them, regardless if it gets, interestingly, it does seem to have longer lasting benefits if you actually go in person and bring the letter and read it to them. So really what this is a real thought-provoking exercise, one where you really need to might take you weeks to do. You got to kind of go within. What can I say? I don't want to do harm. Or maybe I just want to really let my third grade teacher know that this is why I do what I do right now. It could be as far back as that. And they found, Seligman and Chris Peterson at UMich found that out of these, they used 5 different practices that the researchers tested. This one had the greatest positive impact on happiness 1 month later. And then if you do it in person, this went up to a year of like every time they thought about it, it had a really strong feeling. So it may be for you that you don't think it would be the kindest thing to send that letter for some reason, that it might not be received in the way that you want it to be. So it can be just for you, but there is real power in doing it. So I like to call it also the gratitude visit, because this can be a periodic thing. So it's not as easy as jotting a note of thanks, which people love, but this might be maybe 2 or 3 times a year you practice the gratitude visit, or maybe over the holidays. This is some gift that you're giving to yourself and to someone else. So if we move on to the next slide, there's these effects that happen on the brain. What happened to the brains of the people who wrote these gratitude letters? And they compared them with the ones who didn't do any writing. And what they started to notice was that the brains were actually processing information differently. They showed greater activation in the same area where they experienced gratitude, even months later. So that they realized there was some efficacy, that some change was happening. You know, we talk about neuroplasticity a lot. And that activation was in the areas of the brain related to well being, contentedness, happiness, joy, so that we see that by doing these simple things, this is the thing about a lot of the soft skills that I teach. They're simple, but they're so powerful. And they don't simple, but not easy because we our brain gets busy and you know we forget. So let's move on to this other notion about our brains, and it's about the value we put on relationships. So if you could move that slide. Our big brain has, in the last 500,000 years, doubled in size. And scientists have posited, and they're pretty sure it's correct, that that's the reason why we evolved to a brain twice the size, was to function as social, communal group people to survive in that way. So the non-social group of Homo sapiens wouldn't survive. So at the core, teamwork, compassion, self-sacrifice, empathy are vital to creating a team, a community that actually is fostering gratitude in the very way in which it does its work. And this notion, not only this gratitude, then it's like the circle, if you will. The gratitude reduces aggression, it enhances empathy. And then when we do that, we're more likely to be more self-sacrificing. So it's a mutually beneficial circle. And this isn't about, when we place value on friendships, it's not about like, not what I can get from a relationship, right? So I'm going to be nice to you so that I'm going to get something. This isn't about being fake or feigning feelings for people or others, but it's actually just shifting our attention away from more toxic emotions, like, for instance, envy, resentments, and comparison. No. This is, again, always the no judging zone here. We are human beings. Envy happens. Resentments occur. Comparing yourself with others and feeling like you fall short, that happens. But this is the antidote to it, because gratitude doesn't compare. It lets you have your joy and I have my joy. The Buddhists call it mudita, which means I take joy in your joy. Wow. That can be hard for us on a day where we're maybe feeling like we're feeling comparison or we're feeling resentful. So this notion of valuing relationships, not only for the lessons and the love and the blessings that they bring, but for actually teaching us, right? They're our greatest teachers. So let's move on to this understanding that in the midst of our challenges that we're facing, that there is another response, and gratitude actually fits in and dovetails beautifully with that. So let's move on to the next slide. And it's a very short little video that I think will help to highlight what we're talking about.
When Nelson Mandela walks out of Robben Island prison after 27 years with so much magnanimity and graciousness and forgiveness, he says, "You can put my body in prison, but you cannot imprison my spirit." And that's really true for all of us. And so a piece of gratitude or gratefulness is even the gratefulness like we heard from that passage that the Tibetans will say, "Grant me enough suffering or enough difficulty, pray for it, that I might have that which I need to really awaken compassion, to truly open my heart. So that difficulties, anybody not have them? You have your money back, right? You have praise and blame and gain and loss and pleasure and pain and fame and disrepute and joy and sorrow and birth and death. It's sort of the ticket you get when you get the ride for human incarnation. And so it's not a mistake that you have 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows, as it says in the Tao. What do you do with those? How do you respond? And the difficulties sometimes become the place that burnish the heart, is another kind of poetic language. That somehow the spirit actually grows as strong through the difficulties and the losses and the grief and the adversity. And I remember talking about gratitude at Spirit Rock, and a man stood up and he said, at first it was really terrible. My son and his wife have become addicted to methamphetamines. They become meth addicts. And so we had to take care of their kids, and we thought, like, this is the worst possible thing that could have happened. Their lives fell apart. He said, and then I started to do gratitude practice, and I realized I get to have these grandchildren a lot. My son and my daughter-in-law, who I thought their lives were over, are now beginning treatment. I hope that it works. And with it, they're going to turn their lives around, I hope. And he began to talk about the things that, even in something that seemed very painful and dispiriting and awful in a lot of ways, he said, there are things that have come through this. We are closer, he said, than we've been in decades, since my son left home. We now, even in the struggle, we now have a kind of intimacy that we haven't had for a long time. And he started to list the things that had grown out of that. And it was kind of extraordinary to hear him say
beautiful.
it.
That's a beautiful example for the fact that what you are really grateful for is always opportunity. And there are many things for which you cannot be grateful, but you can be grateful in every moment, like these people. They couldn't be grateful for the fact that their children were addicts and all the rest, but in that very moment, they can be grateful for the opportunity that this gives them. As Bob said, you look for the opportunity. You look for the opportunity, and then you avail yourself of that opportunity.
And the people that we often admire, like the Nobel Peace Laureates of Aung San Suu Kyi or the Dalai Lama, Nelson Mandela and so forth, are ones who've actually passed through some profound adversity, as many of you may have, and somehow that allowed a different spirit to shine through.
Yes, again, gratefulness, I would say, made them fearless, because gratefulness makes you fearless. Gratefulness unites you with all other people, and you don't have to fear anything or anyone. You are grateful for it. You trust life.
Powerful few minutes. And in the words of Jack Kornfield, who was the first speaker, if we can't be happy in spite of our personal difficulties, then what good is our practice? So I'm going to invite you now to a gratitude practice. Placing your feet on the floor, if that feels comfortable for you, however you're sitting, and feeling how, wherever you are, that you're fully supported. You're supported by the floor. You're supported by the chair or bed. You're supported by gravity itself. And to remember that another way to put a gratitude practice, I like to call it the web of life practice. How interdependent we all are. We humans, we the parts of nature, the animals, and the air that we breathe. So I'm going to close my eyes back. If that feels right for you, it can be helpful to to kind of listen in and take this time for you, to kind of just rest, be still, and sitting quietly and at ease, breathing natural. And to begin with gratitude, remembering the people, the family, the friends, the colleagues, the communities that you've created and that you've been given. And maybe even if you can, if it arises for you, who they are. See their faces, hear their voice in your mind's eye. All these people and friends, and neighbors. And with gratitude, remembering our ancestors and our elders. And whether you've been here for a short time or a long time, this world, we've all been here together. But all the people who came before you to bring you to this place, to where you are right now. Maybe some of them you have a photo of, but you've never met them. Just recognizing and being aware of this long, long time that we're all a part of. We sometimes feel like time is so short, and yet there'll be ancestors hundreds of years related to us right now, living in a world so probably very different than now. And also just thanking also as we stay with people, all those whose exertion, all those whose care and labor enable us to go about our daily life. The grocery store clerks, the barista, the nurses and doctors and social workers, the delivery truck drivers, the cleaners, all these people that we occasionally remember to thank, but right now, deeply giving them thanks. And by the way, it can be helpful if you want to, if you'd like, to put one of your hands or both of your hands over your heart while you think about this and be with this sensation of gratitude. And sending gratitude and thankfulness to all the animals in our lives. All of our pets, our dogs, our cats, our bunnies, hamsters, snakes, and the birds in the backyard and the deers and the antics of the chipmunks and squirrels. All who share our world and our environment. May we be grateful and see them as part of the working interweb of who we are. So with gratitude for nature in all its guises, the blessings of the earth, for the weather and its diversity. With gratitude, we send for the safety and well-being, the level of safety and well-being we've each been given. And for the measure of health that you've been given. Being grateful for this body of yours, instead of giving it a hard time for maybe being too much of this or not enough of that. The eyes that can see, the ears that can hear, the skin that can feel and touch, all of it. We're grateful. Grateful for the nourishment and good food that we take in, and the places that we call home that shelter us from the heat and the bitter cold. And knowing too this gratitude that so many don't have these things. What are you grateful for? Throughout the day, you can ask that question and the mind will bring you answers again and again. You let it go. What am I grateful for? What am I grateful for? The resources you have access to, the ability for us to connect here together, calling to mind the material things that actually you appreciate each day. And perhaps even sending some gratitude and thanks to your own personal qualities that you admire and appreciate about yourself. Maybe you love your sense of humor, your ability to listen deeply, your kindness, your honesty, being grateful for these things. And remembering gratitude never envies or compares or is resentful. It rejoices in our own good fortune. Let this practice of gratitude be simple and easy. There's no need to strive for anything. And not just about the good things, but like Reverend Standell Ross and Jack Kornfield mentioned, but to be grateful, not that all things we can be grateful for, but that there are people and situations in our lives that at first blush seem bad. But in hindsight, they helped us learn and grow in wisdom and compassion. So recognizing the blessings in all things and the interdependence of all things. For this and the many other things that show up in our heart and mind, we are grateful. We are grateful. So now what I'd like to do is open up the chat. And if you could move on to the next slide, Blake. The questions that I have, which are pretty simple. What are you grateful for right now? Or this is whatever, resonates more with you. What silver lining did you find following a challenge you've had? Could be recently or some other time, because that is equally something to be grateful for. So let's just open up, and if Jess wants to read off what people are sharing, that'd be great.
That'd be great, Katherine. Andy, and you can also privately message Annie at our FAS HR programs.
Great, Andy too. Oh, and Gary said, and it's so true, expressing gratitude releases endorphins. Indeed, wonderful. Annie or Jessica, you want to read them?
Yeah, a lot of comments coming in. People saying they're grateful for being part of this community at Harvard and having supportive colleagues. Delicious banana bread, banana with peanut butter that this person had for breakfast. Feeling grateful to have a warm, safe home. Grateful that they have not had to go through this pandemic alone, that their boys have been long lately. Let's see, the health of their family. Someone mentioned the Harvard Square Homeless Shelter, which we've included on the Giving Thanks webpage for donations. Sorry, and comments are coming real fast. A silver lining is the extra time due to no commute. Someone mentions their family and church family, grateful for their dog, that their position allows working from a safe home environment. Grateful for that nice meditation led by Katherine just now, and that a family member is coming out of the other side of a serious health difficulty. Someone says, seeing my son be a good father to his baby in this time of challenge. Grateful for their relationship with God. Grateful for family, friends, and having a job when so many are without. Grateful for colleagues, friends, and family, and Zoom to stay in regular touch, even on the days when they loathe Zoom, and I can understand that. Grateful for sisters, cousins, wonderful friends. Grateful for being home, being able to have my new baby at home with me instead of needing to send her to daycare. Grateful to be a newlywed, especially during these challenging times. Grateful for the possibility of healing with a new political administration on the horizon. Grateful for siblings. Gosh, yeah, there's a lot of wonderful comments here.
I want to add, Andy, the ones that caught my eye too was one, my kid's current obsession with dinosaurs and my cat helping with the Zoom meetings.
Yeah, I love anytime someone's pet joins a Zoom meeting.
Yeah, it's great.
Grateful to have the ocean nearby for walks. The health of family, family and friends all coming to support during this difficult time. Grateful for our beautiful planet and amazing creatures on it. Grateful for supportive networks for family and good health. Grateful for Holmes's pink beard. That's interesting. It's not one I've seen in lists of gratitude before, but I like that. Grateful for my sweet kitties. Grateful for a healthy family, loving husband, warm house, good food, fulfilling work, nice colleagues, walks outdoors. Grateful for the warmth of the sun when the wind is cold. I think that's a good one to keep in mind over the next few months. Grateful for being able to read great books. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm grateful that I can connect with my family and friends. Grateful for hope. I like that a lot. Grateful for family, good health, wonderful meals, and music. And Claire adds, grateful for all the beautiful music I can listen to. Grateful for seeing smiling faces again when we have all been wearing masks. I think I'm also grateful for seeing people wearing masks out. You know, even when I'm stressed, I think it's such a nice reminder that people are trying to take care of each other. Grateful for art and music making social distancing easier. Grateful to my grandmother who took me and my brothers to every museum and monument in Washington, every Christmas visit. Oh, I love that. Oh, grateful for the internet, synthesizers, and my fiance. I love that. Grateful to see a former FAS colleague with us today. We miss you, Angela. Oh, I know there are a bunch of them that I have not, that are scrolling by too fast. Grateful for a family tennis coach. His lessons are applicable even in pandemic days. Grateful for the chance to perform in a virtual choir. That's very cool. Oh, grateful for my FASHR family. We love you, Angela.
So this is beautiful. I think you have all, just look at it all. Isn't it wonderful? And I love how people are right in the moment feeling grateful for something that's happening right now, like Angela visiting, and that someone remembered their grandmother and Christmas visits down to DC. And tennis coaches and pink beards and dinosaurs and family and friends and walks. It's all there. Beautiful. Thank you so much for your contribution to this time. So let's move on, if we will, if that's to the next slide, which is going to give us a little bit more. Well, we're going to talk about appreciative inquiry just for a moment, because I think it's helpful in a work setting, but it helps everywhere. Some of you might be already familiar with it. I just wanted to briefly touch upon it, which really is this gentleman named David Cooper Ryder, if any of you are familiar with him, management consultant. And he said, when do we change as individuals? Well, in the past, we thought that we changed as individuals. The old wisdom was when things went badly, you get feedback, kind of along the lines of 360, right? So you get the feedback that what you're not doing right. But AI, which is what appreciative inquiry is the exact opposite. It says that we change by discovering what is best about ourselves and when we see specific ways to use our strengths more. So instead, we're always looking from an asset-based to a deficit-based. And this is really another slant, if you will, around gratitude and gratefulness. Because I think I mentioned this in another talk with you guys a week or so ago, whatever we focus on grows, right? So if we focus on the things that are missing, we're going to see more of those. If we focus on the things that we already have, we grow more of that. And the same is true of gratitude, right? When we're thinking about the things that we're grateful for, the things that we're upset about, that we feel like we need to problem solve around, we tend to have a different perspective towards them. They don't feel so pressing, if you will. So moving on to the next slide, I just wanted to mention that to really kind of think about do you look at life and work life from this asset base or a deficit base, and trying to find the middle ground? Because of course you need to see what things aren't going well as well. So this particular exercise was done down over at Berkeley, where you saw the Greater Good Science Center, where we saw the video from. And the next few exercises actually have been studied there. And this is so true for all of us, and particularly with the holidays coming and thinking about whether you want pumpkin pie or pecan pie or whatever we're having, turkey or Thai food, whatever is your food of choice. But have you ever noticed that when you get something really decadent that you like, whatever it is, I do love chocolate cake, that it's the first few bites that are the best? And by around the 14th bite, it's kind of like lost its thrill. But do you know why we keep choosing it? Is because we got the dopamine hit on those first few bites, you know, that really feeling good, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And we want that again. So we keep eating it thinking we're going to get it again. And really, by even slice 2, you're not going to get that same pleasure. So what they realized, and they call this hedonic adaptation, which simply means the phenomenon that a tendency to adapt to pleasurable things and appreciate them less. Again, so we don't really want to eat the 20th bite of that chocolate cake, right? So what they did in this 2015 study is they had them do what they called the take it away for a week, basically practice. And what they did was they found that if they took away whatever that pleasure was, maybe it's when you have coffee or tea in the afternoon, you have cookies and you do it every day. And you know, you're not really enjoying it as much. Or you can fill in the blank of something that you know you're not really getting the same joy out of. But if you give it up for a week and then return to it, they started to notice that they were again able to appreciate and derive greater pleasure from it. And I know that if you, for any of us, like for instance, occasionally I give up coffee, which right now I'm on tea, and I do that for my health, but I love the taste of coffee. So when I go back, that first cup of coffee, when it's been a month or 2, wow, is it good, right? So this is to recognize that we take a lot of sensate pleasures or pleasures for granted, and the importance of how we can savor and enjoy them more. And this is kind of along the lines of, you know, when you're eating whatever your breakfast is, somebody mentioned their banana and peanut butter was so yummy this morning. It's kind of like that. They were savoring their banana and peanut butter. That is gratitude, and another way for us to really enrich our lives. So moving on. Keeping an eye on the time here. So I'm going to move along a little bit more, but this is really important. They call it the power of subtraction, which is simply, if any of you have seen, I think most of us have, the It's a Wonderful Life, a holiday classic, where George Bailey is having a tremendous amount of challenges, and he finally thinks his life isn't worth living. And so he asks Clarence the angel, it's a great little film, he says, I wish I'd never been born, and he grants him this wish. But if you think about it, we often take people that have, you know, in our lives, we don't think about them often, you know, often in a way of like full appreciation. Think about what life would be like if certain people, family members or friends, were never in your life. Now, this can make us a little slightly sad for a moment or two, but realize that these are gifts freely given. In many ways, it's not like, this isn't about deserving. It's about, it just arrives. And the same is true of jobs and educational opportunities. What if they never came across? So by subtracting and thinking of a way of what if this never happened, we come to realize how important that job opportunity, how grateful I am for it, or that education or that person. And that can shift things. So let's move on to the next slide. One of the things they realized was that gratitude reduces materialism and creates a sense of abundance. That creates a generous heart and not a lack of scarcity, or a feeling of lack or scarcity. What they did essentially in this study was they gave people money, and they call it the Pay It Forward study at UC Berkeley and UWISC, and they had, the money actually was given off to a local charity, but the caveat was you only could give the money when you felt grateful, not because you felt like you ought to or you should. And they were able to measure the brain of the people distinct from a feeling of guilt or want. And they not only noticed that people that were feeling more generous wanted to give more and more often, but the feel-good chemicals, were pumping through their body. So that this sense of we choose, and gratitude creates abundance in any circumstance. So let's move on. Giving is especially this time of year. Just wanted to mention, for many of us, we're already feeling pretty well, but for some of us, we are feeling a lot of anxiety. There are people who are feeling a lot of anxiety and depression. So they actually worked with the gratitude practices and mental health interventions with 300 adults, mainly college students, who were beginning counseling. And they had them write, one group wrote gratitude letters, one group wrote about their really tough experiences they're going through, and one group didn't write about anything. And the interesting outcome was, as you would know, the ones who wrote the gratitude letters with counseling did the best. But over time, what they noticed is it wasn't just all the positive words they used in the gratitude letters. No, it was it was lessening the words of negative language. So this is a really interesting thing for all of us. It's not like we keep saying, oh, I'm so happy, I'm so joyful. It's more also being aware of how we speak and how we talk to ourselves, and using less negative language that actually is more powerful. So moving right along. We're coming close to the end, but I just wanted to, just as this kind of like our gratitude practice, but it's the quality of our awareness that equates to the quality of our lives. If we can be present and notice what's around instead of completely on schedule mode and to-do mode, we can see what's here, because this is it, guys. This is it. So we can start to notice those things outside the window, or that smiling little girl, or that delicious whatever it is, and we can be present to it. So moving on. I have more to say on that, but I want to honor your time here. Gratitude indeed is the best medicine. It heals our mind, our body, and our spirit. And the more that you do it, the more you attract an abundance of things to be grateful for. And may that be so for each of you in the coming days and weeks and months. Thank you all. It was a pleasure to be with you all. A little bit of technical issues, but it all worked out well. And here is our EAP slide. I'm grateful for everyone that helped here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Catherine. That was wonderful.
Catherine and Jess and everybody, thank you so much. And whoever has the power to unmute us, could you do that so we can hear each other's voices in gratitude?
Should be able to unmute yourselves, and you can also turn your videos on too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank
you, everyone.
Thanksgiving.
Stay well. Thanksgiving.
For you.
Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Well,
Bye-bye. Thank you very much for an interesting program.
Catherine, can we get a slice to that cake?
Yes.
Nice beard, Mike.
That was fantastic. Just what we needed on a
Yes.
day like today.
Definitely feel a little
Thank
lifted.
you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for joining, everyone.
you.
And it was
Thank you, Jess. I'll send you that.
And again, you'll find the link to our virtual Giving Thanks card on our FAS HR website.
Great.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. This was great. Have a good day.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Yeah.
Much appreciated.
See you again.